Hey there, sports fans. Welcome back. Another episode of the Bruin Shavers Sports Podcast, the first episode of 2025. We made it, Darren.
We made it. We are here. What is
Our
there?
teams didn't make it, but we made it.
Oh no, our teams, eh, you know, we're it, well. Okay, that's not fair. I started to say our teams did better than we expected. My team did better than I expected, but that's okay because your team has higher expectations, and that's okay. That's not.
Well, they did win their bowl game,
That's right. That's right.
so didn't lose to the Ninja.
You know what? I think just to eliminate everything I just said, we ended on a high note for both of us. Done. How's that? I think
And
that's a positive.
Diego has launched a movement. We're going to see more and more people
That's right.
applying for more eligibility. We'll see how that shakes down. The NCAA conceded Diego's case, but I don't think they're happy about it.
I don't think when we have, you know what? Honestly, here's the thing. I started to say when we have 30-year-old seniors, somebody's going to say we might need to do something about this, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But and I cannot remember the name of the player, and it's not KJ Jefferson, the quarterback, because we've talked about him before. But there's another player from Arkansas that because of redshirt and COVID and getting a medical exemption from he's transferring from UNLV to somewhere else this year, and it will be his seventh year of college football, and he was not JUCO. So
Mm.
I know that we're headed down a slippery slope, but it's not new. I mean, this guy is literally. I mean, think about it. He is going to be playing football with guys this year that when he was a senior in high school were in fifth grade.
I had no idea Darren McFadden was still playing college ball.
Well, he got that one more year because of Pavia. That because of Diego. That he's coming back.
We're glad you are with us for this episode as we launch into the new year. Hopefully, your new year has been a
Yes,
good one so far, regardless of how your team is doing.
absolutely.
We hope the very best for you this year.
Mhm.
Let's jump into the biggest news, and that's the portal, Darren. We still hear a lot of news about the portal. There's still a lot of mixed emotions when it
Yep.
comes to discussing the portal. A
Hmm.
lot of teams, colleges are buying football teams. We've heard
Yep.
that about the team that Ohio State has right now. We've heard
Yep.
that about what LSU is doing. It's a new day and age in college football, and
Absolutely.
the portal seems to be here to stay. There might be some adjustments, Darren, but do you really
Hopefully,
see the portal going anywhere?
I think truthfully, our beginning conversation with the whole eligibility thing, whew, that one almost got difficult. Eligibility thing um, has made the portal even more front and center. And so, no, I don't see it going anywhere. Hopefully, like you said, there will be some changes because, goodness gracious, it is a little out of control, and there's no denying that. But uh, it's here in some form or fashion here to stay. I think I don't see a scenario. There's a very lengthy. We don't even want to begin to get into it. Conversation about adjustments to NIL with the possibility of paid players, contracts, players union. That could ultimately have an effect on all of that. But man, that's a big conversation for a completely different day. So for right now, in some form or fashion, it's here to stay. I don't see it going anywhere.
And the SEC has remained extremely active in the portal. Let's talk about
Absolutely.
national rankings. In terms of portal national rankings, LSU comes in at number one, Ole Miss at three, Auburn at four, Texas A&M at six, Mississippi State at seven, and Kentucky at number eight. So again,
Yeah.
dominating that top 10.
Hmm.
It's a whole new ball game, so to speak, Darren.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of surprised when you look at that list. I was shocked that Kentucky was up so high.
It really is amazing, and honestly, kind of both ends of that really kind of get your attention. Number one, good for LSU. Somebody knocked the king of the portal off of his throne. Lane Kiffin is now at number three instead of number one. So good for LSU. And with Ole Miss not being up there, but yeah, Kentucky with the with the way their year ended and all of the conversation and their last two seasons, all the coaching back and forth, easy going to A&M and all that stuff, their last 2 years have been really weird. And for them to be in the top 10, and I think they have like 19 recruits or 19 transfers coming in, and like 6 or 8 of them are 4 stars coming out of high school. We're 4 stars coming out of high school. So it looks like it's really getting some work done in the portal. So maybe that's the thing that kind of sets the tone for them this year to make it a little bit better year in 2025.
The two biggest factors for LSU's number one ranking in the portal: the decommitment of Bryce Underwood, which freed up an incredible amount of money, which they were able to use to go after players to fill other
Hmm.
needs. So, first of all, thank you for him decommitting.
That's
And the
right.
second letter of gratitude I'd like to send out is to Notre Dame. You've made the playoffs. Brian Kelly is seeing that. You know that's putting pressure on him because he left Notre Dame to come to
Yeah.
LSU to win a national championship. And if Notre Dame goes on to win the national championship, we may see Brian Kelly donate his whole salary to NIL because there will be that much pressure on his back now.
Either that or explode in a press conference, just literally, just because I mean, this might be a conversation when we see ultimately what Notre Dame ends up doing, but just where they are now, all the conversation about coming to LSU to win a national championship because the players and the resources weren't there, and Marcus Freeman, this is his third year, is that right? Because it's Kelly's third year. So in his third year, he's not just in the playoffs, he's in a deep run in the playoffs when everybody completely and totally bought the propaganda, for lack of a better term, and said these guys don't have a chance, including me. I'm not making fun of anybody, including me. And here they sit, and they've looked strong. They haven't lucked into it as far as what they've done in the playoffs. They've looked strong.
Let's talk a little bit about the playoffs and the games that we've already witnessed, and then looking ahead to the games further on tap. Texas Arizona State, probably the most entertaining of the
Oh,
playoff games.
absolutely.
Texas looked like they were going to run away with it. Arizona State, they had that fight, that grit. They clawed back, wound up
Mm-hmm.
being an 8-point game. Darren, I was so impressed with this Arizona State
Oh,
team.
absolutely.
They were fun to watch, and there was a part of me, even though I'm an SEC guy, thinking I wouldn't mind if they win,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm glad Texas won, especially with
Exactly.
Georgia losing like they did. So we still have one SEC team in the mix. What do you think about this game?
What's Scatadoo?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the running backs? Man, how are you not impressed with that dude? He was so impressive to watch. Just his grit. Not to make everything about Vanderbilt, not my intent, but I very much got a Diego Pavia vibe. If he is on the field, he is going to try to wreck everything in his path to pull out a win. I was so impressed with. I'm right. I'm right.
How did you even draw that connection?
Just for the attitude of how they played on the field. That's all. That's strictly all I'm saying. But I was so impressed with him. And you're right. You watch him do what he does on the field, and there's a part of it that's like, oh, I want Texas to win. But man, if that dude got a win in the playoffs, that wouldn't hurt my feelings. And then I'm glad Texas won. But it was fun. So much fun to watch. So incredibly fun to watch.
And then in one of the least entertaining games, unless you're a
Oh,
Buckeyes fan, Ohio
yeah.
State jumped all over Oregon. That
Mm-hmm.
game was never in doubt. The
Nope.
Buckeyes are playing at such a high level right now, Darren.
Unreal.
Is anybody playing better than the Buckeyes?
No, and I don't know how you stop them. I think that's a legitimate concern. I know we'll talk about the Texas Ohio State game here in just a minute, but I mean, how do you stop? Who do you stop? Their quarterback is absolutely on point. Their running game is absolutely on point. Their wide receivers look like they just all of a sudden found four Randy Mosses to put on the to put on the field, and nobody can do anything with them. Especially, I can't remember his name, and I apologize. But number four, what the wide
Jeremiah
receiver?
Smith.
Oh my goodness! I do not want to be the cornerback that lines up against that dude.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and take me out for I'm sick. I'm injured something, but I don't know how you stop them. They're so everything is clicking, even down to the play calling of Chip Kelly. Everything is clicking right now. It really is incredible to think about. And I know we've talked about this before, but that Michigan game and what that game looked like, and then watch these guys. It's amazing. It's really incredible to watch.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Everything is clicking right now. Their
Mm-hmm.
uh, execution, play calling, everything coming together. Ohio State.
Yep.
Now they go on to play Texas, and
Yep.
wow, I just not sure about that. Uh, Texas has the talent, but the way
Yep.
Ohio State's playing, Quinn Ewers is going up against his former team. He's been a little shaky against tough competition. You think back to that regular season matchup against
Yep.
Georgia, they got after him. Uh, does Sarkisian stick with Ewers if he struggles? Do we see Manning come into the game? A lot of
Yep.
factors here because this Buckeyes team is loaded and they are clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well said.
The other playoff games, uh, well, Penn State, Boise State, somewhat of a snoozer. Uh,
Yep.
I just felt for Ashton Janty. The guy is an
Yeah.
incredible talent, and he gave it all he had. Just
But it just wasn't happening. I mean,
no, it was an uneven playing
yeah.
field,
Yeah.
particularly in the trenches.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to give props to this Penn State team because it may be I think it's a realistic view. I don't think it's a jaded view, but this Penn State team under James Franklin has just about year in and year out, or has year in and year out had the ability to not show up when they needed to lay an egg in the worst possible moment, and in the playoffs. I know they had their moments in the regular season, but in the playoffs, they've done what they need to do and they've looked impressive. I mean, not Ohio State impressive, but they've looked impressive. I got to give them their credit.
Speaking of impressive, Notre Dame looked incredibly impressive
Yeah.
in a 23-10 win over the Georgia Bulldogs in the
Hmm.
Sugar Bowl. Notre Dame, Riley Leonard is playing well, not
Yeah.
throwing up incredible statistics. The defense is playing
Hmm.
well. They are doing what they need to do to win. Georgia, of course, was without starting quarterback Carson Beck. Gunnar
Hmm.
Stockton came in his first career start. But this Georgia team's been a little bit up and down all year
Yeah.
for Georgia. There's questions about the offensive line. There's questions about Mike Bobo's play calling,
Hmm. Hmm.
questions about execution. And at the end of the day, I think we saw two teams going, at this point at least, in two different directions. Notre Dame, much like Ohio State, is finding its groove.
Absolutely.
Georgia wasn't able to do that.
More so than I think at any point during the entire this Georgia run under Kirby Smart, this looked like a Georgia team that kind of flailed about aimlessly in a big moment. Like typically when there's this big of a moment, a Kirby Smart Georgia team is going to show up even if it's with unpredictable characters, even if it's with names you may not have heard of prior to them being on the field for that night, and it just didn't. It's like everything was disjointed, and just never. There was never a moment where you even felt like, all right, the Georgia we know is about to show up. You just never got that feeling from this team in this game.
Yeah, yeah, spot on. Now we look at a Notre Dame Penn State matchup.
Yep.
Thoughts on that, Darren? One of your favorite coaches is in this one.
Yeah, it's just everything I love about college football. James Franklin and Notre Dame. Woohoo! Anyway, uh, I think this game may be as simple as, and this might be oversimplifying it, but it's the first thing that pops in my head. Who's going to really show up in this moment? Because obviously you've gotten to where you are. You have talent. You have design. You have, all of those things that you need. Maybe execution is a better word. This is going to come down a game of execution. Who in the moment is going to avoid the emotional penalties, both pre-snap silly stuff like jumping off sides or false start, and post-snap emotional stuff. You know, stopping when you need to stop, not continuing a play out of bounds. That's silly things that can happen when you get ramped up in this kind of game. And then when it comes to the design that's put together by both coordinators, who's going to execute it on an almost flawless level? Because that's the way both of these teams seem to be playing right now. I think that's what it's going to require of whoever. So it's going to have to rein in the emotion and execute flawlessly. And I mean, that could be one team doing it ridiculously, and this is a blowout, or we could see both teams really do it well, like the Texas Arizona State game, and it'd be really close. I think that could go either way.
Both teams come in with solid play at the quarterback position.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yep, for sure.
Well, before we make picks, let's give you a preview of when these games will take place. Thursday night is the Orange Bowl with Penn State and Notre Dame. That's at 6:30 kickoff Central Time. And then Friday night we have the Cotton Bowl, 6:30 kickoff time, Ohio State against Texas. I don't know how they do the ticket distribution, Darren, but that's in Dallas. You expect to see a pretty large contingent of Longhorn fans drive up I-35 for that one.
I would assume Jerry World is going to have some burnt orange in the place. And just for the record, high school football is over, so we're okay with this one on Friday night. Is that correct?
We are absolutely okay with this.
All right.
One, so
it's postseason. High school football's over. I felt like we needed to say that for the record. So
just as long as college football stays away from Christmas Day, Friday nights when there's high school football, and Christmas Day, do not be like the NFL that is so stinking greedy. They just will put games anywhere. You're not taking my Christmas away.
That's right. Preach. That's all I can say.
Well, Darren, are we ready to make some picks? Who do you like in these games?
I guess we'll start with the Thursday night game. I think my approach with this game is going to be the hot hand. And even though, obviously, like I said, I think you've seen some things really happen well for this Penn State team, I feel like Notre Dame's the hot hand. I think their level of execution, like I talked about earlier, I think what you're seeing from them on multiple levels, not just a couple of standout positions, as much as it blows my mind, because I think I've picked them as a wait till they show you how big of a stinker they are in everything else. I think I'm willing to at least buy into a momentum. They're on a roll right now, and I don't know that Penn State can stop it. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame. How about you?
Yeah, Notre Dame is definitely the hot hand here. James Franklin's career record in big games is not exactly stellar. Yeah. Maybe that changes. I don't know, but I tend to, as much as I don't want to,
agree,
because of I think Notre Dame wins this.
It might be the most unfortunate us being on the same page there has been. Outside of maybe picking a Tennessee game. Sorry, Tennessee fans. Go ahead.
Let's move over to the Cotton Bowl the next night, Ohio State and Texas. Darren, who do you think pulls this one out?
I'm just going to go with gut. I want so bad to see Texas win this game. It's going to take an effort, even as well as Texas has played. It's going to take an effort beyond what we've seen from Texas so far to win this game, and I don't know that they have it. So, oof, I hate to do this. I hate to pick against the SEC, but I don't know how you pick against Ohio State right now. I mean, that makes my stomach hurt. I don't even know that I'll have dinner after having to say I picked Notre Dame and Ohio State. Oof, that was rough to even say out loud. But I, man, I want Texas. Come on, Texas, prove me wrong. But I feel like this is Ohio State's game to win, and they'll do it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Darren. I'd like to pick the Longhorns, and if
Hmm.
this was a movie starring Matthew McConaughey,
There
I
you
would
go.
very much be confident in saying the Longhorns are going to pull off an incredible game
Absolutely.
plan, and they're heading to the national championship game. If you'd asked me this 3 weeks ago, I would have said, "Oh, that's a no-brainer, Texas."
Absolutely.
But the way Ohio State's playing, and I wish we
Oof.
had comps where we could say, well, when Texas and Tennessee played, it
Right.
was, but we don't.
No.
We don't. We do know that Ohio State blew Tennessee out,
Oof.
and that was a signal to all of us that this Ohio State team is dangerous. I think they're going to be too much for Texas, and
Yeah.
I'm anticipating the national championship game being between Ohio State and Notre Dame.
That's just, I mean, obviously we're going to watch it and we're going to talk about it, but it kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. I'm not, I think you're right, but it kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. And if Matthew McConaughey Texas football movie did happen, the trick play that won the whole game would be called the all right, all right, all right. Would it not be?
Mmm. That was nicely done. That
Thank
was
you, thank
nicely
you.
done.
That might be my best impersonation, as sad as that is.
I think even he might appreciate that if he ever heard it. Although I'm sure, how many times do you think he's heard people say that to him over the years?
I cannot. As many times as here, we'll go way throwback. As many times as that older lady in the '80s had somebody yell at her, "Where's the beef?" for the Wendy's car. I would say those are probably similar numbers.
Mm. Let's move on to headlines for this week. We want to talk a little bit about SEC baseball. Yes, it is
Yes,
on the horizon, and the top 25 has been released, the preseason, and of course the SEC is dominating. A&M at number
absolutely.
one, LSU at number two, Georgia at four, Tennessee at five, Texas at seven, and Florida at, is that 11? Florida's at 11, I
13.
believe.
Oh yeah, 11. Yep, you're right.
So,
11.
and then you go throughout the rest of the rankings. You got Arkansas at 13, Vanderbilt at 15, and it looks like Oklahoma at,
Mm,
they're in the top
20.
25,
Yeah,
20.
they're in
Okay.
20. Yeah,
And then finishing out
and
with
then
Auburn.
yeah.
Did I miss
Uh,
anybody?
No, I think you got them all, which I mean, that's a large group. And just real quick, one of the things that immediately jumps out to me, I find it really interesting, and believe me, this is painful to say out loud, but I find it interesting that Tennessee is barely in their number five in the top five. That you've got not only Georgia, LSU, and A&M ahead of them, but Virginia ahead of them. Coming off the season they had and how they've from everything you see reloaded. I find that interesting and have an objection to it just strictly because the last thing they need is a chip where they feel like they're disrespected before the season even starts. So I have an extreme objection to that because I think it's a weird spot for the defending national champion to be in. Truthfully,
I don't put a lot of stock in preseason
no, I
projections,
agree.
rankings. I put about much faith in them as finding a manned open checkout at Walmart. It is what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
That's a great analogy, by the way.
I'm sorry, I forgot the indefinite article. The Walmart.
they, you just made it even better. That's what.
We also want to express our condolences and send our
Mhm.
sympathy to the family of Kirby Smart. whose father fell while in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, had surgery. There were complications, and he passed away. And so we want to express our sympathy and condolences to Kirby Smart and his family for the loss of his father.
Absolutely.
We're also mindful of the victims of the attack in New Orleans as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And boy, there are things that just really tug at you, and
Hmm.
senseless acts of violence are one of those things
Absolutely.
that need to stop. That needs to stop. And so
Well
we
said.
express our sympathy, our condolences, and our prayers to
Hmm.
the families who are grieving.
Absolutely.
For those of you who are wondering, you mentioned baseball, but you guys do know that basketball is going on. We are well aware of it, and we are looking forward to talking more and more about
Absolutely.
SEC basketball. Before we get into the men's rankings, let's go ahead and on the women's side, South Carolina number 1, Texas at number 5, LSU at number 6, Oklahoma at number 10. So 4 women's teams in college basketball in the top 10. Great job, ladies, for your appearance there in the top 10. I love how the SEC is becoming more and more of a basketball conference. You notice that, Darren?
Absolutely. Is that not incredible? Yeah, that's awesome. Yes, just completing the takeover. That's really what's happening.
And on the men's side of things, from standpoint of current top 25, I believe the SEC has 6 of the top 10 teams,
Top 10.
9
Hmm.
in the top 25. So a heavy, heavy presence by the SEC. And if you look at their record against out of conference competition, the SEC is absolutely dominating up to this point in the college basketball season.
Absolutely. Yep.
As far as the conference is concerned, the top 10, Tennessee is leading the way. They're looking absolutely stellar, followed by Mississippi State, Auburn. I'll mention Vanderbilt just because it's there, but our viewers can see the rest of the list there. Alabama, Kentucky, A&M, Ole Miss, Florida, Oklahoma, Georgia. And if we go further down the list at some point, I will be able to say LSU as well, but not in the top 10 so far.
Not right now. That's exactly right. But the conference play started this past Saturday, and man, it was a fun Saturday. That Kentucky Florida game was a good game. There were several good game, fun and exciting games. I mean, I think Kentucky Florida was obviously the top of the list. I mean, not only was it with anticipation, but I think it lived up to it. That was a great game to watch. And yeah, what about Mark Pope? I mean, come on now, he's he's doing
Yeah,
something at Kentucky. Goodness,
already 3 wins against top 25 teams. Uh,
and
I
see, was
think
it
that was a
Rupp?
situation. Hmm.
Rupp was the last person to do that. Is that what they said during the game?
Maybe, yeah.
I think they said he's the first person to do that since Rupp,
Hmm.
or maybe it was this early in the season to have three. But anyway, to have that kind of a sentence, I mean, good on you, man. That's
And we're seeing a situation that I think is going to work out for both parties. Arkansas
yeah,
with Calipari, he'll
absolutely,
do well at Arkansas. It's probably
absolutely.
time for a change of scenery. Kentucky got
Hmm.
their guy Mark Pope, and he's just come
Yep,
in, and I think the fan base is more fired up than they have been in the last few years.
agree, agree. And I mean, as scary as all of those sentences are, they seem to have improved, and the fan base is even more excited. Oh, good.
Sorry, Darren. Sorry.
As the rest of the conference says, oh, yay.
Kentucky's kind of been your, as far as basketball, Vanderbilt, a nemesis for Vanderbilt over
Oh,
the years.
absolutely. I have just created some ugly moments. Unfortunately, I've witnessed a few of them in person, and whew, not pretty, but it is what it is when it comes to playing Kentucky in basketball for the most part. So
Those games will age you quickly.
exactly.
For years, though, when it came to basketball, Kentucky, you talked about the SEC, and people say, well, there's Kentucky. And then every once in a while, you talk about someone else
Oh
having a stellar season. Now, though, it's like, well, it's a
yeah.
lot more than Kentucky.
I mean, look at just in this standings. Kentucky is 1-0 in the conference and 12-2, and just because of all the tiebreakers and everything, they're what is that 6? So when's the last time, even this early in the season, you saw that? Kentucky usually comes out of the gates dominating everything and everyone for the most part. And now, I mean, when's the last time? It is a very rare exception for the conversation to be about somebody other than Kentucky, much less, if we're being very honest, Tennessee. I mean, in Tennessee has been the entire and seriously so. They're 14-0. The way they play is exciting. The level. I mean, speaking of people with eligibility, I mean, good for Sakai Ziegler. I mean, what is his? This is 11th year, something like that. It feels like it anyway.
That was a little passive aggressive, Darren.
Well, I mean, he's going to end up with like 14,000 assists or something because it'll look like he's been there for 11 years. So,
yeah, that's kind of like how I feel about LeBron breaking Michael Jordan's records. It's like,
exactly.
How many more years have you played than Jordan?
Exactly. In a completely different league.
Yeah.
But anyway, we don't even have to have that conversation.
Yeah. But it's going to be fun as the season continues to ramp up.
Yeah.
And, we're talking about the football national championship, Darren. But before you know it, I mean, we're already into January. We're going to be talking March Madness is going to be here before you realize it.
Oh, it's going to be here. and I'm okay with that.
Well, thank you for watching our first episode of 2025. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, that like button. Tell your friends about the show. We appreciate you joining us on the show, listening,
Absolutely.
watching, and sharing a love for college sports with us, particularly the SEC. New episodes drop every week, usually Tuesday toward the evening, but you never know. If you subscribe, you will be notified. So thank you again for watching. Until next time, y'all take care.
Have a great week.
Thank you for making the Brew and Shaver Sports Podcast your go-to sports show. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our show if you haven't already. Your feedback is so important. Let us know what you think about this week's show. Send an email to brewandshavers@gmail.com or a text to our text line 318-390-3599. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you again for listening to the Brew and Shaver Sports Podcast. See you next week.